Welcome back, my money moguls in training. You are listening to the Do.Different.Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Social Impact Now and Connective Institute, and managing partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. Oh boy, do I have an amazing episode for y'all today. I have the amazing Scott Maderer, who is just, you're going to find him so incredibly amazing and fascinating, and to tell his story, you are going to take so much away. But this show today is really going to be focusing on how to figure out what really matters. How are you getting stuck in your money story, but also in how to budget, how and where and how can you actually move forward? What should you be thinking about, and how can you align your financial goals and priorities, but also your personal purpose with your finances to make sure that your dreams come to fruition? He's going to really help you get those wheels spinning in your head about debt and how you get unstuck from getting motivated to actually follow through on your goals. This episode will give you the mental reset that you need, that you didn't even know that you needed to get started. But let me first start and talk a little bit about Scott. In 2011, Scott created Inspired Stewardship as a business to serve Christian men and couples struggling to live out their calling. He works to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasure so that you can identify and live a fully authentic life that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family. As a certified human behavior senior consultant and member of the John Maxwell team, he focuses on helping you understand yourself and others. He offers assistance through one-on-one coaching, speaking, and workshops. And in 2024, he launched his book, Inspired Living: Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasure. Welcome to the show, Scott. I'm so glad to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, great. Well, we're not going to waste any time. I'm going to ask you what I always ask every single one of my guests, which is, what is your first memory of money?
You know, my first experience or kind of memory that sticks in my head was I was a young child, probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 5, somewhere in that range. And I'd gotten my money, my allowance for that day. And my mother and I had gone to the mall, and I decided to go to the arcade with my allowance, and my mom let me, and I cashed out all of the arcade, all of the allowance money, and basically blew it all in the arcade. And on the way home, I can remember being in the back seat of the car and crying because I had spent all of my allowance money at this arcade and had nothing to show for it. Now, my mom, to her credit, she let me do this knowing this was going to happen.
Of course.
She let it happen for me to learn that lesson of making a different decision with my money. So that's probably my earliest memory with money.
I love that. I think so many people can relate. Everybody, I think, has that story. And God bless your mom. She was just like, oh yeah, no, I know how this is going to end.
She knew how it was going to end.
But that was the reason why it sticks in your mind, right? And you're like, wow, that was a life-changing moment. So
yeah, I've basically been cheap ever since. So.
Right. Well, and that's going to be my next question. So when did you realize that money had influence? For some people, that's a completely different story. But what about you?
Yeah, early on, I did. Now, like a lot of us, I kind of went through a period where my behavior didn't align with my attitudes about money, but I've never looked at money itself as having the value. I learned early on, in fact, that lesson that I just shared was part of that it wasn't really about the money. It was about, is the experience that the money gives me worth something? There's a why behind the money. The money's just a tool. And once I started looking at it that way, it was a lot easier for me to start aligning what I did with what I believed and actually having it show up in my money.
I love that. So how have your challenges with money shown up in your business or in your relationships?
So my wife and I actually went through a period pretty early on where I was teaching school. I made about $40,000 a year. We had over $60,000 in debt. I was being the good husband and protecting my wife and not telling her about it. I was going to shield her from all of this. Of course, she's some smart lady and she knew exactly what was going on. But, that anyway, men are stupid sometimes. But because of all of that, I was getting to the point where I was actually suicidal because of finances. Number one cause of male suicide is actually financial issues. My wife and I were not communicating, facing divorce because of finances. Again, number one cause of divorce, money fights and money issues. So literally both of those showed up. It's a typical story, even though it's not a typical story because most people don't share it. And eventually we kind of turned things around and decided, look, we're either going to separate, or we're going to come together. We decided to come together, and relatively quickly we ended up getting completely debt free, changing the way we were living with money. I changed jobs in the midst of that. I had emergency surgery in the, all of these other things happened. But the real shift was that mindset shift of looking at it differently and deciding, hey, we're going to be weird. And it's okay that nobody else is doing this. We're going to be weird. And that's the way we're going to live. And we've done it ever since.
So I want to talk about that, but before we talk about what were the weird things that you did, what were some of the difficult conversations? Can you take us back to that first conversation where maybe you came clean to your wife, and what was that about? I think our audience would benefit of like, how do I have that difficult conversation? I'm holding in this financial secret. How do I even approach this subject with my partner?
I think the most important thing is to just be open up front and authentic. So I literally sat her down and said, look, this is our situation. We've got this much debt. This is how much I'm making. I don't see how we can get out of this. I've been thinking about, taking my life so that the insurance money would bail you out. I literally just told her the truth of everything that was going on in my head and what I was feeling. The interesting thing is, so like I was listening to some radio programs at night that were giving me inspiration. Turns out she was listening to the same programs during the day, coincidentally. Wasn't really a coincidence, but it felt like one at the time. And then, she, like I said, she already knew everything, that most of what I was coming clean about, she knew, but she's over here trying to not put stress on me by not communicating. And I'm over here trying to not put stress on her by not communicating. And once you come clean and say, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to protect you. This is coming from a good place, but it's the wrong action.
Right.
And if both parties are looking at it that way, then naturally it's easier to come together and go, okay, yes, you've screwed up. Yes, there's been a mistake. Yes, I've screwed up. Yes, there's been a mistake, but let's come together. Let that be the past and look towards what are we going to do in the future to make this different. It's not just what you say, it's the attitude behind it that I think really matters.
And that's so important. What I think was a gift in your situation was it was clear that there wasn't guilt and shame. So, that it's so much easier to move forward. And one of the things that the framing I like to think about is we're on the same team. Right. We are on the same team to get to the same place, to be together, to be, and so that is so important. And what I think your story illustrated is you all demonstrated, hey, we both realize we're on the same team. And actually, we're not on the same team if we're not sharing the difficult parts together. Isn't that why we have a partner? Is like, so we don't have to go through the difficult parts by ourselves.
Yeah. And there was guilt and shame, but it was self-directed guilt and shame. And what I mean is we didn't come into the conversation with, here, let me tell you the 72 things you've done wrong. I owned up to things that I was doing that I felt were wrong. Some of those she agreed, some of those she didn't agree. Some of those she's like, no, that's not, I get it. That's not a mistake. You're doing the best you can. Others, she's like, okay, you're right. That wasn't the right thing to do. What are we going to do different? And she did the same thing. So we owned our own role and talked about what we were going to do, as opposed to coming into the conversation with you statements. You need to stop spending less. You need to, that's how we normally handle money. We yes. turn it into a you thing.
Right.
And instead making it an I thing, this is what I'm going to do, helps both of you own it. Because guess what? No matter what, you're both involved. At the end of the day, you're tied together. If you're married, if you're in a partnership, if you're doing all of that, you're tied together. You have to decide, do you want to be in this together, like you said, or do you want to go your own ways? And honestly, at the end of the day, that's a decision that you have to make. But if you're going to be together, you each have to own your own part. I hate the things that when people say marriage is 50-50. It's not. It's 100-100.
Right.
Everyone has to give 100%, not 50%. If all you're giving is 50%, no, that's not enough. And that's kind of the way that we ended up looking at it after we talked it through.
And I think even if you're going to choose to separate, you still have to have conversations, right? Because, right. And so I think too often, even if one partner decides that they want to exit, there still has to be a conversation, because there are these things that you have together, whether they're in one person's name or not, to be able to still have a conversation about what's going to happen. And are we going to come from a place of like being mutually beneficial, or do you want to just like hurt that other person? Well, thank you for that. And so now let's get into like the parts that were weird. So what were some of the weird things that, because I have a feeling they're not that weird, but what were some of the weird things that you did as you sort of resurrected your stability, your financial stability?
And I want to be clear that these are things that we did. That doesn't mean everyone should do these things. So just to put that disclaimer up front, because a lot of times there's no one size fits all journey to getting straight with your money. So I want to be clear about that. But for my wife and I, again, when we started this journey, we had about $62,000 worth of debt. When we ended, we'd paid off $78,856.42. Not that I know it to the penny, but I know it to the penny. And it took us 2 years, 11 months. So real quick, $78,000, 2 years, 11 months. The reason, by the way, the debt went up is because I had 2 emergency surgeries in the middle of that. We got to pay for both of them because one was in December, one was in January. Yay, calendar year. That makes you pay everything twice in insurance. It's a wonderful system that we have. That we did all of that. And so that added to our debt. But we made an average of $55,000 a year during that time. So if you do the math, you realize, wait a minute, how did you pay off $78,000 in 2 years, 11 months? I am not allowed to round that up to 3 years. My wife won't let me. So it's 2 years, 11 months. We did all of that. You live on nothing. And for us, that was radical when you think about what we do in this culture. By the end of it, I had gotten a corporate job and I was kind of moving up the corporate ladder. My income was going up. It started very low. It ended up much higher. And that's why, the average is kind of in the middle. And I'm driving like a 1999 Ford that literally when I drove, I had to like occasionally stick the headliner back on the car because it would fall off in the heat and hit me in the head. Right. I didn't have a radio, that kind of, it was a complete junker because we could buy that for cash. And people are looking at me going, dude, you go buy a new Lexus or something, you got this great job. And I'm, nope. This is what, it gets me to work. That's all that matters. I don't really care what it looks like. We were showing up in a way that was different because we weren't acting out of the appearance. We were looking for the authenticity behind it. I didn't care that other people looked at my car and when it's a pile of junk. I'm not trying to impress somebody at a red light, And now I drive a nicer car today. And, we've gotten to it. We bought a house not too long ago. We've done right things. We don't live like that anymore, but we chose to be really radical and not go on vacation, not go out to eat. Our date nights literally were bologna sandwiches on the trunk of a car. We would drive down to the lake and kind of park where we could look out of the lake and we would eat a bologna sandwich together. That was date night. That's not a date night, but it was a date night for us because we had chosen to live that way. And so some of those things were visible, like the car, and it caused people to kind of look at us and go, y'all are weird. Something's different. That's why I use that expression of we got weird, because people literally would say, y'all are weird. And eventually the coaching business came out of the fact that they would then say, could you help me be weird? And that's how we got started coaching. Yeah.
But that weirdness is you all prioritizing your financial health, you all prioritizing actually your future by saying, I am willing to go without today so that we can prioritize saving or paying off these bills, because that is, I find, the stress. That
Hmm.
is where disease comes from. When you are stressing about something that you have no control over, your body starts to want to fix itself. And it can't fix itself because it's a daily grind of you trying to keep up with the Joneses, you trying to live this appearance while inside you're crumbling. So thank you for being just
Yeah, it's
so
a facade.
transparent about that, right? It's all, listen, we're all living a facade.
Hmm.
And I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't care who's looking. I've learned, especially living in this body and in this skin, I can't really concern myself because people are always going to have something to say. And so if people always are going to have something to say, what's the song go? Give them something, Bonnie Raitt, like give them something to talk about. Like give them something to talk about. Be in control of the narrative. Yeah, I know they're calling me weird. I know, but you know what? Guess what? My family is taken care of. My kids are fed. I don't have an insurance payment. My car registration is probably 1/3 of what yours is because
Hmm.
I'm not paying the most expensive registration rates. And so what am I saving by doing that? And how much am I able to I'll be actually able to retire, right? You'll be actually able to retire because you don't have that debt. Well, this is so exciting and amazing. And y'all, we have just gotten started. This is just the beginning of our conversation. I can't wait. We've just talked about a little bit about Scott's personal story and his personal journey and some of the things that he's had to overcome and conquer with his partner. And now going into segment 2, we're really going to get into this inspired stewardship and a stewardship coach. He's going to tell us all about what that is. How can you get into it if that's something you think that you're interested in doing and pursuing, but also getting into some of the mindset tricks and hurdles that we get into around budgeting and doing and becoming a little bit more weird. So I want you to stick with me. Come back after the break where Scott's going to show you how to do different better through inspired stewardship. I'll see you back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we have a wonderful, amazing guest who you probably heard about in segment 1. But if you're just catching up with us, we are talking to Scott Maderer, the founder and CEO of Inspired Stewardship. And we're going to learn all about that, about how you can think about you leveraging inspired stewardship to help you find your calling, align your money with your values and with your calling. So, welcome back, Scott. You are a stewardship coach, which isn't a term we necessarily hear in finance in everyday life. So, what does stewardship mean to you, and how does that shift the way you approach money management?
So stewardship is really just an old-fashioned word, and you often hear it in faith-based circles. You'll go into church, and one of the things that I think is unfortunate is oftentimes nowadays when you hear stewardship, it's about like, we're going to do a building campaign. We're going to do something and we need you to pledge money. And it's kind of all tied into money. But the truth is stewardship doesn't just mean money. So going back in time, feudal times, there was a lord who owned a castle, and he was too busy doing lordy stuff to actually run and manage the castle. He was doing what he should do as the guy who owns all the stuff and manages all the stuff and is out running the soldiers or doing this or doing that. So they had to have somebody to kind of do the work and run the castle, make sure that people were showing up on time and doing what they were supposed to be doing and paying their taxes and doing all of this. And that person was called a steward. That was their name. So they really were in charge. They were a big name. They ran everything. They would usually live in a very nice place and have good stuff, but they didn't own any of it. The Lord owned it. And so you can see how in religious or faith-based circles, of course, the Lord would be God, and we're the managers of those resources and not the owner. So I do come at it with a faith-based background of We are managers of the resources, but I'm also trying to reclaim that word from we're starting a building campaign and say, okay, wait, our resources are more than just our money. It's also our time, it's our energy, it's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, it's our mindset, it's our relationships, it's all of that stuff is ours to manage, not just for our own benefit, but for the larger benefit of others, of the world, making an impact, making an improvement, creating all of those better things. And when you look at it that way, you start changing the way you look at money, because it's no longer just about hanging on to it. It's allowing money to be currency. Current means flow, and sometimes money's flowing in, sometimes money's flowing out, but is it doing it for the right reasons? Because it's going to flow in and out, but it's the reason behind it that matters. And so stewardship is about that mindset of how you look at that flow.
And I love that, because I talk about the same thing. Your money mindset is not disconnected from all the other parts of your life. Everything should be in alignment. And it's the hardest part is figuring out the alignment. And like what I just led a workshop with 12 women, and it's like aligning your money with your values, and what are the compromises that you are willing to make, and what are the compromises you're not willing to make. And that's and understanding the implications of those decisions as well, and that there's no good or bad, right? But let's make sure that there's alignment. And what I hear you're talking about is you're also going to point out when things are out of alignment, and now there's a choice that needs to be made. And it's up to this person to make, or the couple to make the choice of like, well, okay, you said you wanted this, but you're making decisions that are going to take you over here. So which one is it? We just want to make sure there's alignment. And
does that really serve what you said you want? And the answer is no. Okay, then change what you want, or don't do it.
Right. This is a fork in the road. What are we doing? And I think we need so many more people doing this. You're doing this. I'm doing this. So how does one get started? And they're like, hey, you know what? I've recovered. I've gone through this journey, and I've come on the other side. I think I have a great story, and I'm a great person to maybe help people be able to do this for themselves. Like, there's no college degree for this. So how do you get started doing something like this?
Yeah, legally, in most states of the union, in fact, all of them that I know of, but I'm going to say most because I haven't actually physically checked in every single one. And so there's probably an exception out there. There usually is. You don't have to have any sort of certification or degree to be a coach, which is a great thing if you want to get started. It's also a terrible thing because it also means there's a lot of people out there that are going, I'm a coach, and they have no earthly idea what that means, and no training and no skills and no anything around it. So it is that balance between having the passion for it and then putting some knowledge and some skills around it. So as an example, a lot of folks think that coaching is about advising. It's about coming in and going, hey, here's what I did, and it worked for me. You should do what I did. Well, that's advising. That's telling someone what to do. And the problem is, if their values are different, if their position is different, if different family dynamics, whatever it is, if it's different, it may or may not work for them. That's what I said earlier about, hey, these are some of the things we did to be weird back in segment 1, but maybe these don't apply to you. Maybe you'll make different decisions. Right. And like you said, it's not good or bad. It's just different decisions, and that's okay. So when you come in with that attitude, it moves you more towards coaching. So coaching is about being curious. Coaching is about being judgment-free, holding that space of, one of my favorite things to say is, tell me more. Because people will say something and it's like, I don't yet know where you're really coming from. Keep talking. You think you've told me something, but you really haven't yet, because somebody says, I want freedom. Okay, yeah, but freedom means a million different things to a million different people. What does freedom mean to you? What does that look like? What does that smell like? What does that taste like? And so I'm actually part of a coaching cohort. We're called Coach Connections. We train financial coaches, and I'm the head instructor for that group. We just started a cohort not too long ago. That's kind of the idea behind that program, is we're coaches who connect with other coaches because we want to lift each other up. We have an abundance mindset. It's not about competition. It's not about I win, you lose. It's about, hey, how can we get out there and actually do this in a way that we win, our clients win, we all lift up together and come together to make sure that there's success, there's growth, everyone's winning. Because so often being a coach out there, it's a very intense job.
It's
very emotionally draining. And if you're doing it all by yourself on an island, you burn out, or you end up making bad habits and bad decisions that don't serve you or your clients well. And so we're really interested. We even do free meetups once a month just to pour into coaches. So it's like, if you're interested in those, you can find that information at coachconnections.com.
I love that. And I love the abundance mindset, because we do need more people. You talked about in the first segment about number one cause of suicide amongst men is finances. Number one reason for divorce is finances. So clearly we need more financial coaches, because there's a lot of people. I mean, we're still sitting at, I remember when I was a kid, the divorce rate was at like 48%. It's still hovering at like 50, 51%. So clearly there is still a need. We need more coaches. So the fact that you all have this abundant mindset and want to bring more people to learn how to do this, because we need tentacles going to the farthest reaches of wherever our different communities are. So this is so amazing. So because you've had so much experience in doing this, for the folks that you've been working with, what are some of the themes that you've seen around people's positive money mindset? Like, what are some of the themes that you're like, people who have positive money mindset? What are some of those themes? But also, let's maybe start with the negative, and then what are some of the themes that you've seen with the negative mindsets? And then we'll go to like, what are some of the themes you see with like to have a positive mindset?
True. And a lot of these are going to be mirror images of each other. Often what is our negative could be stated as a positive, right? And we've touched on some of them already. A lot of times we look at things like a budget or changing our behavior around money as restrictive. We look at it as the things that we're saying cutting out of our life or giving up. And a lot of times we look at them as these are things that we deserve, or these are things that we've earned, or these are things we have to have that. Even that language. I won't let my clients say I had to. You didn't have to. You chose to.
Right.
It still may have been the best choice. I'm not saying that's a bad choice. It's a choice.
Right.
Because when you say I had to, you took away your power.
Right.
You have power in this situation. You can do something. And that's the negative, is that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of I have to, that feeling of I'm locked in. And if you flip that around, that's the positive mindset, is realizing you always have a choice. Right. May not be the good choice or bad choice. There's 17 choices and none of them are great. I don't care. You still got a choice.
You still got to make a choice. You have agency. You have agency. I think that's the other thing that I find.
It gives you power.
Right. And that's what I find, even with my entrepreneurs, they think about, well, like, I don't have any options. You may not like the options, but you have options. Like, what's the baggage you're bringing to how you're thinking about these options? They're actually decent options, right? But even some of the story that we talk about in our head. I've got a friend of mine, grew up one of 5 kids, and we always tease each other. He's like, I really grew up poor. I said, you grew up in a house. Like, everything's relative. I grew up in an apartment. Like my whole childhood was in an apartment. I said, you played hockey, right? I'm like, I sometimes didn't know when I was going to eat, right? So I'm like, everything's relative. So sometimes, but when you think of that deficit mindset, it then begins to color that I don't have choices, when you can't see the choices that you actually have and the agency that you have. Even calling the credit card company. When I tell entrepreneurs, I'm like, call all of your credit card companies and see if you can get a lower rate. I said, just call. Like, you never know, but you'll never know if you don't make the phone call. But
the answer is automatically no if you didn't ask.
Right.
If you ask, there's a chance that it's yes. I mean, maybe not, but it might be.
But it might be, and you could go maybe from 28% to 26%. Do you know what the difference of that is over the course of a year?
I'll give you a better example than that. I literally was talking to a coach 2 weeks ago, and this was one of the things they came up with is, could they call? Yeah, let them call the credit card. They called other credit card companies. One of them went from 28% to 5%.
Whoa.
For a little while. Never heard of that before. I literally fell out of my chair when they told me, but I'm like, awesome, great, take it and run for now, because aggressively and make progress, because you've got a little chance to breathe and to make progress.
Right.
But again, what would have happened if they never called? They would have still been paying 28%. And it's not even that you just have options. You always have more than two, because that's the other trap that I see people fall into. Right. They want to make it dichotomous. They want to make it, I can either do this or I can do this. My car broke, so I can either buy a new car or I can, not have a car. There's more options on this list than that. You could fix the car, you could do that. You could ride a bicycle, whatever. There's all sorts of things you can do. Generate a ton of options before you start evaluating, because a lot of times once we come up with two, it's like, okay, that's it. That's all the options.
That's right. That's right.
Never all the options.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this segment, I'm going to ask you one more question. So you help people get clear on their priorities and not just their spending. So how do you help someone align their values with their money when they feel like they're barely keeping their head above water?
Yeah. One of the mistakes is, I think we look at it as a math problem, and it's not. It's a attitude problem. It's a behavior problem. It's a mindset problem. All those things that we've been talking about. And so a lot of times the very first place to start is to shift the focus from just the money. And I talk about helping you find your why. Let's find the passion behind what you're doing, the why behind it. And again, this isn't a surface level. So going back to that example earlier, when you go, well, my why is freedom. Nope, that's not good enough. Keep talking, because tell me more. Paint me a picture. Show me what that looks like. What does that feel like to you? How does that show up in your relationships? How does that show up in your time? How does that show up in your career? How does that show up in all of the different components of your life? Not just your money, but what does that show up? What is the tangible appearance? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And when you start painting that picture and you can get really intense with it, then all of a sudden some of those decisions that you've been putting off and some of those ideas that you've been deferring or living for the appearance or the moment or keeping up with the Joneses, all of those expressions we use, all of a sudden it's like, that's not important anymore. That's what's important. And now I can make different decisions, and all of the math and all of that other stuff, and even the way you spend your time and energy becomes different.
Right. I love that. Well, we're going to round out this segment. As you can tell, this has just been the most super fantabulous conversation. I hope that you all listening are getting some really tangible. I hope you're like saying like, hey, that's me. And maybe there's a pathway out of this. And if you're looking for help, definitely Scott's one of the folks that can help you with that. So we're going to sunset this segment. We've just been having a really good conversation about inspired stewardship, what that means. If you're interested in possibly thinking about doing this as a career or doing this as a side business, there are options to be able to become a financial coach. And in segment 3, we're really going to get into the practical and tactical. Scott's going to be giving you some real specific tips of things that you can do to start to turn your financial story around and align your purpose, your time, your talent, and your treasure to where it is you are trying to go and what you're trying to do and your passion. So stick with us. Come back in the segment 2. Don't forget to follow and subscribe Scott. Follow and subscribe me. Don't forget to go and like the AM 950 radio Do Different Better podcast. We would love to see you. We want to hear your comments, but don't forget to come back and join us in segment 3. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back, my budgetistas. You are listening to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we have been visiting with Scott Maderer, founder and CEO of Inspired Stewardship, who is here to help you invest, influence, empower, impact, and purpose. How you've been hanging with us, Scott? How's it going?
So far, it's going great. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I hope the listeners are as well.
Yes, I know that they are. So we've already talked about your personal story. We've talked about inspired stewardship. We've talked about how can somebody become a financial coach no matter where they are. And now I want us to get into the tactical and practical. I always love to have my listeners get these really tangible things that they, after they've listened to this episode, they can actually go and start and do. So my first question is going to be talking about budgeting. Most people hear that word and immediately start to tense up. We started talking a little bit about this at the end of segment 2. How do you teach budgeting in a way that feels empowering instead of restrictive?
So all too often what we do is we look at a budget and we say, oh, the budget just tells me what I can't do. The truth is, no, a budget tells you what you can do. It's about looking at your money and saying, what do I want to say yes to? What is the most important thing? If I only had $1, where would I spend that dollar? If I only had $2, where would I spend the second dollar? Where would I spend the third dollar, the fourth dollar, the fifth dollar, and so on? Because I don't care. By the way, I don't care how much you make. You always got decisions and choices. I have worked with clients that make $37,000 a year, and I've worked with a client that made $250,000 a month, not a year, a month. Okay, multiple 7 figures all the time. At either end, there were decisions. Now, granted, they were different decisions and choices. I mean, very different. Right. But there's still a limit. There's still a point where it's like, well, I don't have enough money to do everything, but I have money to do something. What am I going to choose to do as opposed to what am I going to choose to not do? It's a subtle change. It's a mindset shift. It's a language shift. But again, we were talking about agency and power before, and the ability to make choices. That's the framing that lets you make a choice as opposed to just being everything's happening to me, you're happening to it. Now, again, sometimes those choices that you have to make are rough, they're hard, they're challenging, they're uncomfortable, they're painful. But if you focus on the yes side instead of the no side, it doesn't feel as restrictive because you have the power of choice. You're the one that decides what's in there and what's not in there.
Right. So I'm going to be a little bit provocative, and you may disagree with me on this. One of the things that I found in my own experience, and I try to share with other people, is especially when you are a person of faith and you feel this responsibility to tithe. And my position is, I'm like, I think your God, whatever that is, they want you to be happy. I believe in a malevolent God, and they want you to be happy. And your God doesn't want you struggling. And I think God will understand if you don't tithe for a while so you can pay down the $78,000 of debt.
Well, I think it's a personal choice. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. Theologically, I don't believe that tithing is like you're buying your way into heaven. It's not like you're going to show up and St. Peter's going to take you down the hall and go, I'm sorry, this is the house you live in. I know it's a shack, but that's all we could do with the money you sent us. So, you get to live in a shack the rest of your life. That doesn't happen. But it is about the reason that we're called to tithe. Okay. Tithe simply means a tenth. It's just a fancy word for 1/10. Yeah. And usually that was given off of growth or first fruits. So it's literally the harvest. And it was given to help take care of the orphans, the widows, people that could not take care of themselves. We were called to give, not because God needed our money, but because other people needed us to care about them and take care of them.
Wow.
And when you look at it that way, it's about being called to serve others. It's about being called to not just look at yourself, but look outward. It's about changing your heart and your mindset. Again, we're back to mindset and belief. And so for some people, choosing to give throughout the process of getting out of debt actually helps them get out of debt faster. I've seen it time and time again where somebody's like, okay, I don't believe this. I don't understand this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then all of a sudden blessings show up. And in part, that's because I don't think it's magic. It's just, if you're a more giving, caring person, people start getting attracted to you. They want to be around you. You're somebody that they want to hang out with, and opportunities show up.
I agree with that 100%. And I've seen it in my life of I'm always willing to give the shirt off of my back. And I'm doing that because I'm sitting in a place that's better than the person that I'm giving it to, right? No matter what the circumstances is,
there's always
I have a better circumstance, right? Somebody always has a worse circumstance. I'm sitting in a better circumstance with you.
I know I can get another shirt. I know where to find another
Yep.
shirt. I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I might be shirtless for a minute, but I have the resources and I have the network where I can get another shirt. Clearly you don't. So let me give you this shirt. But also I've experienced this in even just people who have wronged me. Right. And I get a little flack. I remember growing up as a kid, my mom used to get after me because I'm like, listen, I don't have to worry about whatever this person did to me. No matter whether you believe in God or you believe in karma, I'm like, the universe is going to take care of that person.
Yeah.
I don't need to give any time or energy to that person. And even in my adult life, people have found that like that, they found that weird. I'm just like, well, don't you want revenge? Don't you want them? I said, the best revenge, and I know that we've heard this, like the best revenge is doing well.
Yep.
I'm going to be fine. I am not going to let this person rob me of any sleep. I'm not going to let this person rob me of any of my energy. I am not going to let this person, they are going to do whatever they're going to do. And if that's the life that they are going to choose to live, it's eventually going to bite them in the behind. And have some people taken advantage of me? 100%. But I'm like, you know what? Clearly they needed it. Clearly they needed more. So that's fine. That was my charity. They can, right? I mean, I've had people steal from me. I've had employees steal from me. I've had devastating situations. I've had partners like do horrible things. And I'm like, I remember one partner that I was living with ended up, I had to end up leaving the home because they put out a restraining order against me for no good reason. So I had to leave my house, and I had to leave my house for like almost 3 months. And after we had the court date and I was able to come back in my house, this person like took everything out of the house. The only thing that was left were my clothes. And a friend of mine who came back with me literally right after the court hearing was like, oh my God, let's go get your stuff from them. I said, oh, no. I said, no. I said, if this is the price to never see this person again, I got off cheap. I said, I can get more stuff. My piece is too valuable to me. And so that is not a part of my purpose. That is not a part of my ministry. I'm going to let this person go so that, and they can have all the things, they can have all the stuff, and I can get new stuff. Right. Yeah. So that whole mindset, I think, goes back to what you talked about before of like, if you can get clear about what are your values, and you can get clear about your purpose, and you can get clear about what you are called to do, it makes everything else so clear. I like to say you get to right. It's you right swipe and left swipe. I mean, it becomes, and you have no feelings or judgments or thoughts about it. You're just like, no, that's not for me. Not to say that it's a bad thing. That's not and it might not just be the right time. This isn't the right time for that thing. Not that it's a bad thing. It's just not timing, right? Or I'm not the right person. I'm like, you know what? That blessing is for somebody else. Let me, to your point, let me not gatekeep. Let me give that opportunity to somebody else. If it's an extra client, you know what? I don't want to do that work. Let me give that to somebody else. But I think in this moment,
a filter.
Right? It becomes a super filter, right? And I think in this moment, we're just so caught up in the wrong things that we need to, I feel like we need to step back and kind of see like everything's not for everybody. What is it for you? And what is for you doesn't have to be at the mutual exclusivity of everybody else or anybody else, right?
Yeah, it's about looking for authenticity for yourself, but doing it in a way that doesn't sacrifice other people's chance to be authentic. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is some goody two shoes, you know, everybody has to win and give a participation trophy just because you showed. That's not what we're talking about. It's your decision, because you could have gone into taking that relationship decision as an example and said, you know, I've lost, they've won, and now I'm in a losing position. Instead, you said, okay, yeah, they did something. They took advantage of me. They did something wrong. But I'm going to choose to win in this situation by not giving them my energy, not giving them, you know, any of that stuff. Why do I want to give them that dignity of my energy? My energy is worth more to me than they are. Not, you know, not in a mean way, but just in that's a waste of energy now. Exactly. It's okay to redirect your energy towards other things. And you know, going back to the tithing topic, it's one of the things too of maybe you don't want to give money right now, but there's still ways you can pour into others. There's still ways you can serve others. Maybe it's giving time. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's giving your skills or your knowledge. But whatever it is, you have to have this weird kind of both and mindset where you are both focused on you and what's authentic and real to you. And at the same time, focus on the people around you, your family, your friends, your community, your whatever, in a way that serves them too. And the weird thing is when you start finding that balance between both, that's when I've seen people have astronomical success.
I love that. Well, we're going to bring it home. So my final question to you is, for someone who wants to do different and better with money, what's the first mindset shift they need to make? And what's one action they can do as soon as they finish listening to this episode?
So I'm going to give you one that's kind of thinky and then one that's kind of actionable. Let's put it that way. They're both actionable, but actionable in a different way. You'll see what I mean. So the thinky one is this: stop and take some time to think to yourself, what would your life look like 5 years from today? 5 years from today, if you sat down with a friend that you've lost contact with and you haven't talked to him for 5 years, they moved away, you moved away, you both got busy, whatever it is, and your friend looked you in the eye and said, man, how have the last 5 years been treating you? I am so glad we get a chance to catch up. And if you looked your friend in the eye and said, you know what? Man, these last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life. What would be true to make you say that and really mean it? What would your relationships look like? What would your career look like? What would your spiritual walk look like? What would your finances look like? What would all of those components? And I'm not talking about writing a fairy tale about, oh, I won the lottery and I've got 10 million. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. I'm just realistically, what would be true in your life? What would be different? And when you write that story, believe it. Now, here's the truth. It's not going to look exactly like that in 5 years. That's not the point.
Right.
But the point is, all of a sudden, you're reframing and beginning to look at your money in a different way. Now, practically, one of the easiest ways to get started, too, is do a money audit, meaning for a couple of months, track what you're doing. And the reason why I said track, not budget, is because I'm looking at what has happened.
Right.
What
are your behaviors?
What are you actually doing? Do both of these and then start looking at those things you're actually doing and looking at the thing you want to be in 5 years and going, is this serving me? Is this moving me in that direction? If it is, yay, leave it in. If it isn't, maybe we need to start making some changes.
I love that. Well, this has been a wonderful show on shifting mindset, budgeting, inspired stewardship, how to become an inspired stewardship coach, a financial coach. And I just want to thank my guest, Scott. Thank you so much for being on the show. Your wisdom and insight has just been phenomenal.
Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Well, that concludes this episode of the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. I want to give you a couple things. Make sure you check out Scott's website, inspiredstewardship.com/different. He's got some special things just for our listeners. So be sure to check that out. You can catch him on IG at Steward Coach and also check him out on LinkedIn. Don't miss it. Pick up his book. I think I talked a little bit about the book. Let me see. The title is Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Treasure. Don't forget to pick up the book. It's going to inspire you. He's going to go into more tips and tricks that he's talked about. Don't forget to follow AM 950 as well as your girl Elaine on IG at Do Better with Elaine. I can't wait to see you at the next episode and where I continue to show you how to do different better. See you all next time.